Welcome to another edition of ClearTalk. I'm very pleased today to have Brad Malone back with me, VP of Professional Services at Solutions 360. Hey, Brad, how are you today?
I am well, thanks.
Great. So what I wanted to ask you about today is the concept of closed loop estimating. I've heard you talk about this a number of times and the importance. What is it?
Well, in its simplest terms, it's really to learn more from each project so as to be more accurate and profitable in future projects. Projects are always a combination of similarities and uniquenesses. And so it's really learning from both of those. When we have similarities, then we can narrow our estimates. When we have uniqueness or risk, we can figure out how much contingency to use. So it's really a learning process. A lot of people use it as a judgment process. Like, was our estimate right? And an estimate's a guess.
Absolutely. And a lot of people seem to forget that. So if we want to use the process, what are the prerequisites for setting up this kind of estimating?
The first is an organizational mindset that the company is selling projects into a portfolio of projects, and that labor pool that's serving the projects, as well as service in some companies, has a capacity and a capability. And so it's looking across sales and ops, getting rid of all the silos that we often have in the finger pointing, so that sales is selling into that capacity before they obligate the company to go fulfill it. So it's working those two together, and then also selling into capability. If we're doing something we've never done before, do we have the skills to do it? And again, that capacity. So it's those two teams working together in a mature environment versus, again, finger pointing or ignoring one another. The second is a common task-based model. So we often call this a work breakdown structure. So the big phases or verbs or functions, and they're used by all the projects, again, like design or engineering or programming. This is distinct from a role-based. I often see like installation, and the installers are doing programming and rack build and install. And it's like, well, which of the three? And it's like, well, they're doing all of them. So then we get into this, you're getting credit for breathing versus understanding what each role, the distinction between the role and the activity of the function that they're doing. And what we want to look at is measuring the function, because the function creates a deliverable that meets a quality standard. And that's what we're really estimating.
Okay. So when does this all start? Do we have to wait until we finished a project to go back and then look at our original estimate, or when do we?
Not at all. Yeah, okay. It's throughout. I mean, it's also that organizational mindset that the estimators serve operations. I often find that estimation is done by estimators who like their categories. You know, this is how I like to estimate. Well, great, but it's not how we are actually running the project. So it's based on an apples to apples. How we estimate is how we plan, is how we schedule, is how we assign, is how we perform work, is how we do the WIP, status, progress, forecast, and that closed loop. And we don't have to wait till the end of a project to be measuring that, especially with, Q360. It's like every night we're seeing the radar screen go across our project, and we can start to see variance against each WBS category. And there's typically 8 to 10, but again, it's apples to apples, apples, apples.
Right. Now, I've always enjoyed when you've talked about lean principles and waste and that kind of improvement. So how does this all work together as you're thinking about those concepts?
Well, when you're looking at the conversation of how I look at lean is how do I get rid of the waste of the conversation? And so if we're looking at our processes and really streamlining process, understanding the handoffs within the organization, how much delay did we have at the warehouse door to get something out, and where did that delay cost the project? So lean is about waste, drama, all of that. Six Sigma is about variation. And so the more similar the project, the more we can really look at reducing the variation, again, getting rid of the waste, the drama, all of that. So putting more effort onto the project versus using effort elsewhere. And usually by using those concepts, you can save 20 to 30% of the labor on a project just by, again, cleaning out the waste. So I always use the metaphor of Michelangelo and David. How did Michelangelo carve David? Well, he just took away everything that wasn't David. And we really encourage companies to just really look at their organization, again, because it's all labor-based. Any labor we use on project A in excess can't be used on project B. So it's focusing on that conversation that I find the most mature companies really look at, versus the immature look at product or they look at duration. We want to look at effort.
Great. Well, that's been very helpful. And again, as always, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Great. Thanks, Brad.